Vishwanath College, Madam Tamuly, who is here, distinguished invitees, Tamuly family, ladies and gentlemen. The feeling that I have right now is that we are on a pilgrimage. Right from the entry point, somehow I got this feeling that we are on a pilgrimage. This institution, Ripunjoy Knowledge Hub, is a unique institution. It's a symbol of deep pattern in life. It reflects the imagination, the creativity of a couple who want to help the young generation in a unique manner. I haven't seen such a hub elsewhere in the South. I do not know other states. It's a lovely idea. Green, and then this arrangement, which is state-of-the-art technology. It's quite imaginative, fortunate enough to have such a center where we can have interaction, where we can have brainstorming, where we can give our views, our thoughts and phenomena of various types, like the presence of the cell phone, its uses and abuses. I think it's a unique opportunity, and I must thank the Tamuly family for this. There are various ways of helping a society. I think this is one of the best ways to do that. There's no doubt, absolutely no doubt about that. I thank the Trust for giving me this opportunity to come here and present a few observations. When I asked Sri Tamuly on what should I speak, straight away he told me, Sakriyo. Now, when you get enough of freedom, what do you do really? You get confused. And it happened to me. I don't know really what subject to choose. Finally, I struck upon this particular subject. Why not say something on the philosophy, now that we have a philosopher present amongst us today, this evening, and economics of Amontukumar Sen. In my own way, I'll try to explain what his philosophy is. And you can stop me at any point if you have patience, or if you feel you have said enough and you better leave. So, I would like to start with this, that Amontukumar Sen is not merely an economist. He is a social scientist. His canvas is much broader than economics. It is said that economics has two horizons. One is the engineering origin, and the other one is the philosophical origin of economics. Now, in the engineering origin, we are all concerned with the techniques, the concepts, the equations, the production function, input-output table, linear programming, and so on. And much has been said about the engineering origin of economics. Very little has been said about the philosophical origin of economics. And Amartya Sen, the Nobel laureate, has focused on the philosophical origin of economics. And I think it is to be noted that Amartya Sen is only the second professor after Adam Smith to hold the post of the chair of the professor of economics and also the professor of philosophy at the same time. That's a tribute to its contribution to economics insofar as its philosophical origin is concerned. Now, I think the best way to appreciate Dr. Sen's contributions to economics will be to identify the milestones and find out the characteristic, a major idea in each one of its contributions to economics. So I thought I would start with the choice of technique, which is a dissertation he submitted to the Cambridge University when he was very young. And in 2 years' time he completed the whole analysis. And there he has gone into a very important issue which affects all of us in the underdeveloped world. Underdeveloped countries are all overpopulated, capital-hungry countries. So the choice of technique obviously is to be labor-intensive, a technique which will use more of labor comparatively to capital in the production process, because labor will be cheaper, capital will be dearer. We do not have capital, we have enough of labor. Naturally, we should employ more of labor-intensive technique. Now, Amartya Sen points out that in the short run that can be a good idea to apply the labor-intensive technique. But in the long run, a capital-intensive technique will be much more desirable because it will lead to more output, more savings, more investment, and a higher rate of economic growth, which is so necessary for the underdeveloped world. So, in the intermediate stage, it might lead to some amount of unemployment, but in the long run, it will be nice for the economy if it goes for capital-intensive technical production. And the point he has made in this connection is that because labor is abundant in the underdeveloped world, the wage rate is low, therefore the cost of production will be lower to that extent. But then the point is, the productivity of labor is also very low. Only employment will not lead to output. Employment will lead to output only when the laborers, the people who are engaged in the production process, have a high level of efficiency, dexterity, skill, productivity. So he has come to the conclusion on this basis that a capital-intensive technique would be highly desirable in the underdeveloped countries, like India. Next. That's one milestone. Another milestone is collective choice and social welfare. It came out in 1970, the other book was in 1960. Now here he talks about welfare economics, normative economics. Welfare economics is about desirability of certain policies which influence to a very large extent the welfare of the people of any economy, of any country. And there, and this is important, there we go for value judgments. That is, we may have a number of alternatives, but among these alternatives, which one is the best? We have to have value judgments. We cannot remain neutral. Now this is a departure from traditional economics. We have a famous economist we had, Lionel Robbins of London University, according to whom economics is neutral between ends. It is the function of an economist to spell out the various alternatives. He did not say which one is the best. So it was light bearing and not necessarily food bearing. Now Motherson departs from that. He says no, we have to give all the alternatives and at the same time identify the best one. Identify the one which can influence social welfare to the maximum extent possible. So economics is not neutral between ends. There is a relationship between economics and ethics. What ought to be, what ought not to be, is not only the exclusive preserve of ethics and philosophy, it is important in economics as well. And I think this has a Ruskian ring, also a Gandhian ring. The end is important, but the means are equally important. So that I think is it's a sort of a lineage of a tradition which has been carried forward from the past by people like Amonte Sen. I think I'll just move it that way a bit. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. So he has formulated the utility function following Bentham. Bentham talked about the greatest good of the greatest number. So W is welfare. I mean, these are all notations only. W is welfare, U is utility, A, B, C are individuals. So it's a summation of the utility of individuals, which is welfare finally. And but the difficulty is in Bentham that you cannot have interpersonal comparison of utility. For example, 10 rupees to a poor person and 10 rupees to a rich person will mean different things. It may be the same amount of money, but the utility will be different. I mean, and it's difficult to compare utilities. So we have a number of economists who have gone into this issue, like we have the Pareto criterion, Wilfredo Pareto. Then we have economists like Kaldor, Hicks, Sitowski, Little, and so on. And that was the problem, interpersonal comparison of utility. Next year. So we have another line of an analysis of social welfare, and there we have Amonte Sen, Bergson, Samuelson, Arrow. They have developed this other line, social welfare function, where we have a set of value judgments in the form of social welfare function. A social welfare function is an ordinal index of the welfare of the society, and we have a voting system in a democracy. Now, Arrow developed this system, and Arrow's social choice and individual values shows that The majority rule leads to inconsistent and contradictory results. And this arrow shows, with the help of a symbolic logic, that we can have majority rule, we can have democracy, we can make an attempt to find out which is the best function, social welfare function. But ultimately we'll find ourselves at a blind alley. We won't go this way, that way, and in fact that is the point where Arrow gave up welfare economics. And the entire world gave up welfare economics. People started writing obituaries on welfare economics. That is dead and gone. Next. But Sam had other ideas. Now the system of symbolic logic, only of three individuals, X, Y, and Z. And there are three alternatives open to them, A, B, and C. Individual X prefers A to B, B to C. Therefore, he prefers or she prefers A to C. We have individual Y who prefers B to C, C to A, therefore B to A. We have individual Z who prefers C to A to B, therefore C to B. So what are the alternatives for and against? A to B, that alternative is preferred by X and Z. Y is against that. B to C is preferred by X and Y. Z is against that. C to A prefers Y and Z. X is against that. So society prefers A to C, but the majority prefers C to A. Therefore, there is inconsistency and contradiction. Yeah. So unanimous group decision of the entire society is important. Arrow's 4 minimum conditions for social choices were looked into. All the 4 conditions will not be satisfied at the same time. And therefore, we have Arrow's impossibility theory. And under the circumstances, what will happen is, instead of democracy, we have dictatorship. The dictator will impose the decision. Because it's impossible to arrive at a decision in a democratic manner. So welfare economics reaches the dead end. So nobody talked about welfare economics after that. It became a part of history. Now, at that point of time, Amartya was lecturing at Delhi University, and some of us were fortunate enough to have been his students. And there he developed his ideas of welfare economics. And what he did was, when he went over to Cambridge University, he said, I would like to introduce a new course in welfare economics. There were protests all around, but he had 2 very strong supporters. One is Maurice Daw, the other one is Joan Robinson. They said, okay, go ahead, you introduce, and you teach that paper. So, Amartya Sen introduced the paper. He taught welfare economics. And later on, when he left Cambridge University, that course was withdrawn from Cambridge University. That was again the end of welfare economics. But 30 years after that, Amartya Sen was awarded the Nobel Prize because of his contribution to welfare economics. So that was a recognition finally. So, yeah. So Arrow's conditions which created that impossibility theory. Social choices must be consistent, that is transitive. Group decision must not be dictated by anyone. Social choices must not change in the opposite direction from the choice of members of the society. Social preferences as between 2 alternatives A and B must depend only on people's opinions of just these 2 alternatives A and B and not on any other alternative. And so Arrow found out that problem, but Professor Sen has found a way out. And what is the way out? What is the way out? Sen's way out. He redefines welfare economics in terms of concepts used by moral philosophers like John Rawls. Minimax of Rawlsian welfare function is that the social welfare of an allocation depends only on the welfare of the worst off agent, the person with the minimal utility. So welfare U is utility, utility 1, number of individuals there, equal to minimum of all these utilities. It's a possible way to compare utility function. What is important is access to information will make better social choice, and this is only possible in a democracy. Now, I think this is important. First, the worst of agent. Now that's I think Ruskian in origin, because Ruskin had a book, Unto the Last. And Mahatma Gandhi talked about the Antyodaya, the last one first. And here also, in Rawls's philosophy, which has been adopted by Amartya Sen, it is the last one first approach. Today, after so many years of 5-year plans in our economy, we talk about inclusive growth, that no member of the society should be excluded from the benefits of economic growth and development, and everyone is to be included. Now when everyone is to be included, who should get the preference first? If you follow Amartya Sen's philosophy, it must be the last one first. In fact, it is somewhat like this. And if we take this as the poverty line, if we take this as the poverty line, and we have individuals below this line, they are all below the poverty line, fine. But then, look at the relative poverty. Someone is just below the poverty line, someone is further down the poverty line, someone at the bottom. The bottom one, last one, should get the preference. You start all your programs of economic development and growth, keeping that in mind. The last one first. If you can raise his or her level of living, then it is easier to raise the level of living in the economy as a whole. And that will be necessary in a democracy. And for that to happen, access to information is necessary. Because when people are literate, they can gather information, they will know so many things, they become self-dependent. And therefore, in other books, Amartya Sen talks about education and its importance, particularly primary education, elementary education in our context. Next please. Then we had another milestone, economic inequality, 1973, where it identified the factors which lead to inequality. Then poverty and famine, 1981, where it talks about boom famine and distributive justice. Now boom famine is obviously a self-contradictory term. If you have a boom, how do you have a famine? He talked about boom famine. It's possible. He was, I think, 4 or 5 years old when the Bengal famine occurred, the great Bengal famine. Now later on he could analyze the causes of that famine, and he found out that it was not due to scarcity of food. Food was available. So in that sense it was a boom. But then to buy food, purchasing power was not available. So people didn't have the capacity to buy food required for their survival. And so there was famine. That is boom famine. And sometimes we wonder whether we already have such a phenomenon in our own country. Because food production is going up. It's over 200 million tons right now. But then we have a large number of people going without 2 square meals a day. So we have prosperity in a sense, but it's poverty in the midst of prosperity. Where is the purchasing power for the people to buy what has been produced? And then secondly, it's not merely a question of production. It's not merely a question of enlarging the size of the cake. Production may increase, the size of the cake may be expanded. But what about the slices of the cake? What about the distribution of what has been produced? If you have concentration of economic power and wealth in the hands of few, national income may go up, yes, because production has gone up. But social justice may be just missing. So distributive justice is quite important, and he insists on that. Then we have another milestone, inequality re-examined. Not whether we have equality or inequality, but equality of what? When we say equality, it means what? Can there be arithmetical equality? It's impossible. Not only impossible, it's not even desirable. Because people have different degrees of skill, dexterity, efficiency, and therefore the distribution of wealth and so on will be different. But what is important is whether the opportunities are equal. There should be equal opportunities. Let everybody have equal opportunity. Let them all start from the same starting line. I mean, what happens in a 100 meters dash or any such race? You have a starting point. All the competitors are there. And you have someone who blows the whistle and they all start running. But suppose one is 50 years behind, another is 20 years behind, and someone is right on the line, and then you blow the whistle. That competition is unfair. It must not be that. Give the equal opportunities. Let them come up to a level and then have competition. That competition is healthy competition. It's not unfair competition. So he talked about all that in inequality re-examined. Then we have in 1994, population, delusion and reality. It came up in New York Review. Now, that article of Professor Sen was a path-breaking article. In a very summarized form, what he says in that article is that there are two ways to control population in an economy. One is the coercive method, force used by the government to control population. The other one is the persuasive method. Now we say that in China, the first one has been adopted, the coercive method. In India, we have the persuasive one. But there was a point of time in Indian economy as well, he points that out. In the emergency years in Indian economy, in India, force was used to bring down the rate of growth of population. And what he says in that article is that the rate of growth of population did not come down, but the government came down. In 1977, we had the Janata Party in power. It's because one of the excesses of emergency, force used to control population. So he says this cannot be done. And what is much more important is that he points out that in Kerala, they have not used force. But the rate of growth of population in Kerala is the same as the rate of growth of population in China. So it is not necessary to use force to bring down population. And that was a very, very thought-provoking article by Amartya Sen. Then we have another milestone, India, economic development and social opportunity. There, along with one of his friends from Belgium, Jan Drees, Sen has made a very detailed analysis of the educational scenario in India, with particular emphasis on elementary education, primary education. And he finds to his dismay that among all the Asian countries, not to speak of the developed countries, among all the Asian countries, particularly Southeast Asian countries, the state of elementary education in India is the worst. It is the worst. He calls them second-track institutions. We have primary schools, madam, in our country, he says, where the teacher appoints somebody else to mind the class. And it just goes on like that. So what he says is that these teachers, primary school teachers at the grassroots level, should be made accountable to the local authorities, not to the capital, not to the Department of Education, for example, located in the capital. Local authority can handle it better because they know what is what. But the point is that you must have the proper representatives in the local bodies. If you have representatives in the local bodies who have no respect for the teachers, then of course it will be quite problematic. So selection of representatives for the local bodies is very, very important. So he talks about all that. So next milestone is, well, that's a poverty line analysis, poverty index analysis of 1%. We can skip that. Yeah. Then on ethics and economics, I've already referred to that. Then he comes up with the Argumentative Indian, that book, where we have Indian history, culture and identity, where he says that in India, the search for truth is always through discussion, through argument, through introspection, reflection. That has been the tradition in India. It's a big book, Argumentative Indian, but I think it's a path-breaking contribution from Muktasen. Then we have Identity and Violence, 2006. It talks about race, identity and conflict. He says every individual has so many identities. He can be a Bengali, he can speak Bangla only, he can be an Indian, he can be a Hindu, he can be a Muslim, he can belong to this religion, he can belong to the other religion. He has different identities. And if he wants to assert that identity, then there is a problem. One has to find out certain means of coexistence in a pluralistic society. And in that book, he talks about globalization. He says that the progress of Western world today is largely because of globalization in the past. Because we had mathematicians, surgeons, scholars in the Orient helping out the society in the West. So that transmission of idea in the past has led to the growth of the developed countries today when they were underdeveloped. The transmission of knowledge from the East, from the Orient to the West helped the growth of the Western economies. And today it is in the reverse direction insofar as technology is concerned. But globalization as such is neither good nor bad. It all depends on how we make use of it. And to globalize or not to globalize is not the question today, he says. The question is how to globalize. So he talks about all that. Then the last book is not the last so far. I'm sure he'll come up with another important contribution. His idea of justice came out in 2009. He talks about niti and nyaya. Niti is policy, principle, nyaya is justice. And he says that we have niti, but the question is whether we have nyaya in our society. Justice is what is important. So now, if we look into all these milestones, what impression do we get? We get this impression that it's not only about economics, it's about ethics, about justice, about fair play. It's not only about production function, not only about linear programming. So he has raised economics to a status which covers all the aspects of life of a human being in an underdeveloped country, in particular. And that is the reason why he is such a respected academician all over the world. And when somebody asked him, somebody tried to describe him as someone with a leftist camp, he said, okay, you say whatever you want to say, but I am all in favor of justice. Wherever you have justice, I am there. And in 1991, when Indian economy introduced reform measures, he said, okay, fine, this is good, this will do. My idea is, he said, the government of India is underactive in certain areas where the government of India should be more active. And the government of India is overactive in certain areas where the government of India should have been less active. Now when it comes to opening up hotels, issuing permits, licenses, the government of India is overactive. He says the government of India should be less active in these areas. When it comes to the supply of pure drinking water, providing basic public health facilities, providing elementary education, the government of India is underactive. The government of India should be more active in that area. So he said, okay, take me, in whichever way you want to take me. When there was trouble at Singur, they wanted to set up the factory, car factory there. There was trouble. And he came out with an article. He said, okay, if you study the economic history in different countries of the world, you will find that industrialization could take place only when you utilize some amount of land for the growth of industries. And we all know that the leftist is in power in West Bengal. The leftist government wanted to have it. So we have certain situations where what is right is relegated to the background, and a lot of pressures and extra factors, economic factors and social factors take over, and we have to compromise. So there are ideas of which have social relevance, motor sense analysis, and can I end up with just a reference to what type of wit he has, or a witty person that he is. I still remember his classes. In the Data School of Economics we have a hall still there, Vivekananda Hall, and he was at least 22 steps, I think. He was very young then. He was around 23 or 24 years old. And he used to run, all the way from step number 1 to step number 20. And every time he ran, everybody had that fear in mind, maybe you will fall. And he was very active, he was so very jovial. And when we were there was a conference, UNCTAD, United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD. Now Professor Sen was so disgusted with the performance of UNCTAD that he de-abbreviated UNCTAD in his own way. The full form is United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. What was his full form? U for under, N for no, C for circumstances, T for talk, A for about, D for development. Under no circumstances talk about development. Now, a person with that sort of a mission right from day one will be the person who will also be the driving force behind the publication of Human Development Report. The Human Development Report was published for the first time in 1990. It's an annual publication with one of his very intimate friends, Mohbubul Haq of Pakistan. He sort of initiated the step to bring out the Human Development Report. And we have these reports coming up year after year. It's a mine of information. It reflects on so many important issues that we are facing in our society today. So, I thought I would just speak on these aspects, and I'm sorry if I have, sort of created inconvenience sort of a situation. It's your magnanimity, your patience. I'm banking on that. I'm exploiting your patience anyway, I know. But I thought I would just talk about Amartya Sen, because we should know his philosophy. When the entire world knows that, why should we lag behind? So, with these words I conclude. I sincerely thank Mr. and Mrs. Tamuly and the Trust for inviting me to this lovely function today. And I'll carry back, really carry back fond memories of this function. Thank you so much.
ইমান তত্ত্বগধুৰ কথা ইমান সৰস আলোচনাৰে আমাক ইমান সময় ধৰি ইয়াত মহাচন্ন কৰি ৰখাটো অকল গুৰুৱাচাৰৰ নিচিনা ব্যক্তিৰ বাবেহে সম্ভৱ। ছাৰৰ ইমান ব্যস্ততাৰ মাজতো ছাৰে আমাৰ এই সৰু অনুষ্ঠানটোত আহি আজি উপস্থিত হৈ আমাৰ অনুষ্ঠানটোৰ সুস্থ বৃদ্ধি কৰাৰ বাবে Ripunjoy Tamuly Forni Niafor তৰফৰ পৰা আন্তৰিক কৃতজ্ঞতা প্ৰকাশ কৰিছোঁ। ইণ্ডিয়া বাইদেৱে আমাৰ অনুৰোধ ৰক্ষা কৰি নিজৰ ভীষণ কৰ্মব্যস্ততাৰ মাজতো বাইদেৱে নাহো বুলি কৈছিলে। কেইবাবাৰো টেলিফোন কৰিলোঁ, বাইদেউৰ সময় নাই, বাইদেউৰ কিবা পৰীক্ষা আছে, ছেমিষ্টাৰ কিবা এক্সাম আছে, ষ্টুডেণ্টৰ এডজাষ্ট কৰিব নোৱাৰে ক্লাছ ইউনিভাৰ্চিটি। মই বহুত ৰিকুৱেষ্ট কৰিলোঁ, তেওঁ পৰিবাৰো বহুত ৰিকুৱেষ্ট কৰিলে, বাইদেউক ক'লোঁ নহয় আমি আশাৰে আপোনাক বাট চাই থাকিম। তথাপি মোৰ মনত চুলনি ৰৈ থকাৰ কাৰণে মই আকৌ পুনৰ নিজে ব্যক্তিগতভাৱেও বাইদেউৰ ওচৰলৈ গ'লোঁ, গৈ পেলাই বাইদেউক অনুৰোধ কৰিলোঁ। আৰু বাইদেৱে যে আমাৰ অনুৰোধ ৰক্ষা কৰি আমাক যি কৃতাৰ্থ কৰিলে, বাইদেৱে ইমান ব্যস্ততাৰ মাজতো আহি আমাক ইমান ধুনীয়া কবিতা আবৃত্তি কৰি আমাক সকলোকে যি আপ্লুত কৰিলে তাৰ বাবে আন্তৰিক কৃতজ্ঞতা, আন্তৰিক চেনেহ আৰু আমাৰ তৰফৰ পৰা অভিনন্দন যাচিছোঁ বাইদেউ। আৰু মই অৱশ্যে প্ৰথমেই ধন্যবাদ জনাব লাগিছিল বিশ্বনাথ মহাবিদ্যালয়ৰ কৰ্তৃপক্ষক। বিশ্বনাথ মহাবিদ্যালয়ৰ কৰ্তৃপক্ষই আমাক আজি ৰিপুঞ্জয় তামুলী ফৰণী ন্যাসক এই অনুষ্ঠানটো ইয়াত অনুষ্ঠিত কৰিবলৈ দিয়াৰ অনুমতি দিয়াৰ বাবে আমি তেখেতক আমাৰ ৰিপুঞ্জয় তামুলী স্মৃতি ন্যাসৰ তৰফৰ পৰা আন্তৰিক ধন্যবাদ জ্ঞাপন কৰিছোঁ। আৰু আজি আমাৰ সন্ধিয়াৰ বিশেষ অতিথি জুন এনে তামুলী সম্পৰ্কত মোৰ খুৰী, এই ৭১ বছৰ বয়সটো ইমান দূৰৰ পৰা দূৰ ফ্ৰান্সৰ পৰা আহি আমাৰ আজি বৰ্ষপূৰ্তি অনুষ্ঠানত যোগদান কৰাটো আমাৰ বাবে অতি এটা আনন্দৰ আৰু গৌৰৱৰ বিষয় হৈছে। কাৰণ খুৰীয়ে মোক আজি লাষ্ট কেইমাহমানৰ পৰা অলমষ্ট ফৰ লাষ্ট 6-7 months মোক কৈ আছে যে you keep contact with me particularly during the November month so that I can make a trip to India during this time and I can attend this function. So always she used to send message, please keep contact. I can make the program accordingly during this November month. আৰু খুৰীয়ে কমিটমেণ্টটো নিজৰ ৰাখিছে আৰু মই কনষ্টেণ্ট পাছত আছিলোঁ যে খুৰীহঁতৰ বেলেগ দেশলৈ জাৰ্ণি যিবিলাক বহুত ফৰ্মেলিটিজ কিবা কিবি হয় সেইবিলাক মিলাবলৈ বহুত দিগদাৰ হয় সেইবিলাক সকলোবিলাক প্ৰগ্ৰেম মিলাই পেলাই যাতে নৱেম্বৰৰ 25 তাৰিখে যেনে তেনে আহি অসম পায়হি সেইটোৰ কাৰণে আমি চেষ্টা কৰিছিলোঁ এই অনুষ্ঠানটোত আহি যাতে উপস্থিত হ'ব পাৰে আৰু খুৰীয়ে ইমান বয়সতো ইমান দূৰ জাৰ্ণি কৰি আহি আৰু আমাক ইমান ধুনীয়াকৈ খুৰীৰ observation, but I mean to say what you have observed so nicely regarding this cell phone and all this thing. That's what I am speaking, though you don't understand. The cell phone বিষয়ে ইমান ধুনীয়াকৈ যিটো মানে খুৰী প্ৰথম ইয়াত যেতিয়া নামিছে গুৱাহাটীত নামিয়েই মানে চকুত বিষত কৰি ধৰা দিছে কৈছে মানে এইটো মানে কি হ'ল মানে এলাৰ্জি নিচিনা হৈছে কালিৰ পৰা মানে যোৱাকালি যেতিয়া ৰাতি আহি পাইছে আহি পোৱাৰ পিছত মানে এবাৰ মোৰ পৰিবাৰক এবাৰ মোক কোৱা ফোন আহিলে কি মানে আৰু খুৰীক মই কালি পাই এতিয়ালৈকে এটাও ফোন কৰা দেখা নাই কালিৰ পৰাতো লগ পাই আছো কনষ্টেণ্টলি মোৰ লগতে আছে আজি ৰাতিপুৱাৰ পৰা মোৰ লগতে আছে মই এতিয়ালৈকে দেখা নাই যে ক'ৰবালৈ এটা ফোন কৰিছে ঘৰলৈ বা ক'ৰবালৈ বা নিজৰ জীয়েকলৈ যে মই ভালে ভালে ইমান দূৰ আহি পালোঁ বা কিবা এটা মই কালি কৈছোঁ কালি আজি ৰাতিপুৱা মই ক'লোঁ গুড মৰ্ণিং কৰি হেৰি কৰোঁ মই ফোনটো লগাই দিওঁ লাইনটো হেৰিয়াক কওঁ মোৰ পেহী ল'ৰাটোক যে আপুনি ইয়াতে ভালে ভালে that you arrived safely and staying comfortably no it's all right morning মানে ফোন কৰিবলৈ ভাবি আছোঁ মই এতিয়া কিবা এটা হ'লেতো মই জনামেই কিবা এটা হ'লে তাৰমানে সেইখন মোৰ মানে সেইখন অৱস্থা এনেকুৱা হৈছে মোৰ মানে এতিয়া লাজেই লগা হৈছে খুৰী আগত মানে মোবাইলটো উলিয়াবলৈ সেইখন মানে ইমান এলাৰ্জি খুৰীৰ মানে মোবাইলটোৰ প্ৰতি আৰু বিশেষকৈ ৰাতিপুৱা সেই মানে ভায়লেট কালাৰ যিটো মানে বিশ্বনাথ মহাবিদ্যালয়ৰ ইউনিফৰ্ম পিন্ধা ষ্টুডেণ্ট মই কৈছোঁ যে দিছ দ্য ইউনিফৰ্ম অফ দিছ কলেজ আৰু এইবিলাক ষ্টুডেণ্ট হয় আৰু খুৰীক মানে তাতে মই চকীখন বহাই দিছোঁ চাবলৈ মানে ল'ৰা ছোৱালীবিলাক আহি থকা দেখা পাই ভাল পাব কলেজলৈও আহিছে এবাৰ তেতিয়া মানে সেই ল'ৰা ছোৱালীবিলাক কৈছে ষ্টুডেণ্টবিলাকো ইমান কথা পাতি আছে কি কথা পাতি আছে মানে মোৰ মানে এতিয়া লাভ লগা হৈছে শেষত গৈ মই এতিয়া মোবাইল চুইচ অফ কৰি ৰাখিছোঁ Anyway, thank you very much. এইটো এটা আমাৰ কাৰণে মোৰ আৰু মোৰ পৰিবাৰৰ কাৰণে এটা ডাঙৰ শিক্ষা হৈছে যে আমি এটলিষ্ট আমাৰ এইখিনি মিনিমাম হেৰি থকা উচিত যে প্ৰয়োজন নহ'লে আমি যিকোনো সময়ত মোবাইলটো যিকোনো সময়ত ইউজ কৰি থাকিব নালাগে সেইটো এটা আমাৰ ডাঙৰ জ্ঞান পাইছোঁ ফিল্ডত means it's a good lesson for us all regarding this mobile phone. গতিকে মই আন্তৰিক ধন্যবাদ জনাইছোঁ খুৰীক আৰু শ্ৰুতি স্মৃতি যি ধুনীয়া এটা আমাক বৰগীত গাই শুনালে যি বৰগীত এটা পৰিৱেশটো এটা ইমান সুন্দৰ কৰি পেলালে তাৰ কাৰণে শ্ৰুতি স্মৃতিক আমি ৰিপুঞ্জয় তামুলী বৰণীয়াৰ পৰা ধন্যবাদ জনাইছোঁ লগতে দুষ্মন্ত আৰু ফুলত দুষ্মন্ত আৰু মানস দুয়োকে মই আন্তৰিক ধন্যবাদ আৰু কৃতজ্ঞতা জনাইছোঁ আৰু ৰিমনৰ লগৰ আৰু এটা কথা ক'ব বিচাৰিছোঁ যেতিয়া জীৱনৰ সকলো হেৰুৱাই যেতিয়া দিক বিদিক শূন্য হৈ ঘূৰি ফুৰিছিলোঁ সেই সময়ত আমাক হাতত ধৰি পোহৰৰ বাটত আগুৱাই লৈ যাবলৈ পোহৰ দেখুৱাবলৈ দেখুৱাই লৈ যোৱা ব্যক্তিজন মোৰ ভাতৃপ্ৰতিম শ্ৰীযুত অনুপ চৌধুৰীদেৱক এই সুযোগত মই মোৰ ব্যক্তিগতভাৱেও আন্তৰিক কৃতজ্ঞতা আৰু আমাৰ ৰিপুঞ্জয় তামুলী বৰণী ন্যাসৰ তৰফৰ পৰাও আন্তৰিক কৃতজ্ঞতা আৰু ধন্যবাদ জ্ঞাপন কৰিছোঁ আৰু আমাৰ যি মনৰ অনুভূতি আমাৰ মনৰ অনুভূতি ৰাইজৰ আগত ইমান স্বচ্ছতাৰে দাঙি ধৰাৰ যিটো কৃতিত্ব শ্ৰীমতী অৰুণিমা গোস্বামী সেইটো মই উল্লেখ নকৰাকে নকৰিলে মোক সপেষ্ট এই কিতাপখনৰ কথা আজিৰ দিনটোতো মই আকৌ কৈছোঁ মৃত্যুঞ্জয় গাথা কিতাপখনৰ কথা ভগৱানৰ ওচৰত প্ৰাৰ্থনা কৰিছোঁ যাতে তেওঁ জীৱনৰ বাটত আৰু বহু পৰলৈ আগুৱাই যাওক তেওঁৰ সকলো সপোন সাৰ্থক হওক আৰু আজি ইয়াত এই অনুষ্ঠানটোত আমাৰ এই ফটো অনুষ্ঠানটোত উপস্থিত থকা বিশিষ্ট ব্যক্তিসকল আমাৰ কৃষি বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ৰ এছ'চিয়েটেড ডিন বৰুৱা ছাৰকে আদি কৰি সকলো যিসকল ব্যক্তি ইয়াত বিশিষ্ট ব্যক্তি আজি ইয়াত উপস্থিত থাকি অনুষ্ঠানটোৰ সুস্থ বৃদ্ধি কৰিলে মই সকলোলৈকে আমাৰ ফৰনিয়াসৰ তৰফৰ পৰা আন্তৰিক কৃতজ্ঞতা জ্ঞাপন কৰিছোঁ আৰু ৰিপুঞ্জয় লগৰ যিসকল বন্ধু আজি ইয়াত উপস্থিত আছে বা যিসকল নাইও বিশেষকৈ ইয়াতে মই দেখা পাই আছোঁ কাক যেন সঞ্জু পৰাল আৰু বিষ্ণু কাক দেখিছোঁ কোনোবা হয়তো বাহিৰতো আছে ৰেণুকাক দেখিছোঁ প্ৰীতিক দেখিছোঁ আৰু কাক দেখিছোঁ স্নেহাক দেখিছোঁ আৰু কাক মই দেখি আছোঁ জ্যোৎস্না দেখি আছোঁ মই শিখা এওঁলোকৰ অবিহনে অকল এওঁলোকেই নহয় ইয়াত যিসকল নাই বিমলৰ লগৰ তেওঁলোকেও কালি পৰহিৰ পৰা আজি লাষ্ট 3-4 ডেজ মোক যি তেওঁলোকে উৎসাহ যোগাই আছে ইমান টেলিফোন পাই আছোঁ যিবিলাক কিছুমান ষ্টুডেণ্ট বাহিৰত পঢ়ি আছে বিমলৰ লগৰ ইয়াত নাই যেনে এতিয়া খঞ্জন পাৰ্থ দীপংকৰ বা কবি বা যিবিলাক ল'ৰা বাহিৰত আছে কনষ্টেণ্ট আজি মোৰ ৰাতিপুৱাৰ পৰা 10-15 মিনিটৰ পিছে পায়ে আছোঁ কালিও কি কৰিছে আপোনালোকে কিবা কৰিছে নাই পাতিছে নাই মোৰ পৰীক্ষা আছে মোৰ তমুক আছে মই তথাপিও কেইটামানে আহিব বিচাৰিছে মই নাই তোমালোকৰ যদি পঢ়া শুনা ক্ষতি কৰি আহিব নালাগে তথাপি কোনোবা আহি ওলাইছে ইয়াত আহি ওলাইছে উপস্থিত হৈছে গতিকে এই যিখিনি ছাত্ৰ ছাত্ৰী আছে যিখিনি ষ্টুডেণ্ট আছে ৰিমনৰ লগৰ ভগৱানৰ ওচৰত মই প্ৰাৰ্থনা কৰিছোঁ তেওঁলোকৰ জীৱনৰ প্ৰত্যেকটো সপোন বাস্তৱ হওক তেওঁলোক জীৱনত বহু উন্নতি কৰক বহু ওপৰলৈ যাওক ভগৱানৰ ওচৰত প্ৰাৰ্থনা জনাইছোঁ আৰু ইয়াত উপস্থিত থকা সকলো ব্যক্তিকে আমাৰ পুৰণি ন্যাসৰ তৰফৰ পৰা মই কৃতজ্ঞতা আৰু ধন্যবাদ জনাই মোৰ ভাগৰ পৰাই ইয়াতে সামৰিছোঁ এতিয়া মোৰ এটা অনুৰোধ অকণমান কৰিছোঁ আমি অকণমান সামান্য চাহৰ আয়োজন ঠিক এই হলৰ বাহিৰত কেন্দ্ৰত কৰিছোঁ আপোনালোকে যাতে একাপ চাহ গ্ৰহণ কৰি আমাৰ কৃতাৰ্থ কৰে যে ধন্যবাদ
Tamuly bokong boleh boleh.
এটা চকী আছে, সুবিধা আছে।